Hi, Aaron.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for joining.
Of course, of course.
So Jack, we're waiting for one more person. I don't know if you want to get started. And
Yeah, I think we might start because we haven't heard back from her, have we?
that is correct. We haven't heard back.
So we could be waiting a while. I think, and no other members of the town board came in?
No.
Okay, because I did resend them the notice. Okay, I guess we should start with the Pledge of Allegiance since it's a public meeting sponsored by the town. So please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
To the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty,
and justice for all.
justice for all.
I'm just going to briefly read part of the notice for the meeting to set the context. Pursuant to Executive Order number 203 issued by Governor Cuomo, each local government entity which has a police agency must perform a comprehensive review of current police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices, and develop a plan for improvement to address the particular needs of the community, promote community engagement, foster trust, fairness, and legitimacy, and to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color. The draft plan shall be offered for public comment and shall be presented to the town board to ratify or adopt no later than April 1, 2021. So first off, I want to thank the volunteers for joining. This is going to require some work. We still are in the recruiting process, looking for one or two more people with different perspectives. But I want to thank you because this is something that Tina and I have been talking about for a while. When the order first came down to do this, from the minute we saw it, we took it seriously. This is not a cosmetic exercise. This is not, let's slap something together and get the governor off our back. We mean it, and we want everyone to mean it. This is the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative, and there's an awful lot of different meanings packed into that phrase. First off, when you say something is reform and reinvention, you're immediately saying that what the status quo is not satisfactory. And I do think that that's a conclusion that's been derived from national issues, from big city issues. We're not going to bog down in extraneous conversations of whether Black Lives Matter, of course they do, or whether you defund the police, because if you literally take that phrase seriously, it's one of the dumbest ideas you've ever heard, but I think it was intended to be more complex. So the important part for us is the word collaborative. What we want is we want the community, the police department, and our elected officials to come together and collaborate on an analysis. And that analysis is, what is the current role of the police department in our community? And whereas that's almost sounds like a simple question, there's reams and reams of data that we're going to have to look at to see exactly what the current policies, practices, and procedures of our police department are. And then we have to define what the ideal policies, practices, and procedures are. And then we have to develop a plan to bridge the two, to take us from where we are to where we want to be. And I just want to say up front that I'm very proud of the East Greenbush Police Department. With Chief Rudzinski and Assistant Chief Reichert, we have 50 years of distinguished service as police officers. And you would have to go a very long distance to find two people who can discuss policing and police procedures better than them. This is not confrontational. I don't think I think Governor Cuomo's order, if you read it, has a lot more to do with big cities, with minority populations, and we're in a different community and we're a different kind of police force. But having said that, we have the same task as every other municipality with a policing agency. So I think this can be done. I don't want to underestimate how much work is involved, because whenever Tina's around, everything has to be data driven, and there's a lot of data. I think you'll be very impressed by the data that the police department collects and organizes, and we'll take a look at all that stuff. So with that, if anyone wants to talk while I'm talking or someone else is talking, just raise your hand, and we can figure it out that way. So where we'd like to start is, how about just everybody do a quick introduction? Tina, you go first.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Tina Tierney. I am on the East Greenbush Town Board in my second 4-year term. But I've lived here for over 20 years with my husband and my 2 adult sons now.
That sounds funny. Chief?
Hi, I'm Elaine Brzezinski. I am the Chief of Police here in East Greenbush, and I know most of your faces, but for those of you who don't, thank you for joining and agreeing to participate in this committee. I've been a police officer here in the town since 1995 and was just recently promoted to Chief last June. So welcome and thank you for joining.
Maria?
Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Barrington, resident of East Greenbush and grew up here. And fairly recently, in the last couple of years, retired, and I used to work for the Unified Court System. And I'm happy to be here, happy to be included. Thank you.
John?
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Reichert. I am the very newly appointed Assistant Chief in East Greenbush for about 6 weeks now, 7 weeks. I was born and raised in the town of Schodack, which is right next door. I attended the East Greenbush School District my whole life because I live in that part of Schodack that encompasses the school district. I have 24 plus years of law enforcement experience, beautiful wife at home, and 3 crazy boys that keep us all busy. And I'm looking forward to this collaborative. Thank you.
Roger?
Hi, I'm Roger Johnson. I'm a 30-year resident of East Greenbush. I'm currently serving as chair of the Ethics Committee. And I have, I have probably over 50 years of police experience.
Okay, Robin?
Hi, Robin Cole. I was born and raised in East Greenbush also. I've lived in numerous corners of the country over the years, and am currently back in the area. I'm here to lend a family and consumer perspective of living with mental illness. I am past president of NAMI Capital Region. I also worked as executive director of NAMI Miami-Dade County in Florida. And I'm thrilled to be part of, asked to be part of this committee. It's a familiar ground for me. I've worked with other police departments in the past with CIT training and working on reform and community collaboration. That's at all different levels of state, local, and city government, county government. So thanks for having me.
Okay. And last but not least, Aaron?
I am Aaron Matthews. I'm currently a senior at Columbia High School, and I've lived in East Greenbush for my entire life so far.
So far. Okay, so following the agenda, we want to talk about the goals for our committee. And this is one of those great moments where I'm going to read some stuff that sounds like I know what I'm doing, but Tina wrote it. So because Tina wrote it, you know we got it right. But the Executive Order 203 is a very interesting document. Government has a responsibility to ensure that all citizens are treated equally, fairly and justly before the law. I mean, that's kind of a truism and pretty obvious. But the executive order assumes that urgent and immediate action is needed to eliminate racial inequalities in policing, to modify and modernize policing strategies, policies, procedures, and practices, and to develop practices to better address the particular needs of communities of color, to promote public safety, improve community engagement, and foster trust. Now, promoting public safety, improving community engagement, and fostering trust are, of course, primary ideals for any police department, regardless of the demographics. And in the executive order, it said each local government which has a police agency, so that's us, must perform a comprehensive review of current police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practice, and develop a plan for improvement to address the particular needs of the community. That's very important because we're going to have to identify the particular needs of our community. To promote community engagement, which quite frankly, I think, and I'm not knocking the former police chief, but I think we have an ace police chief on that score. Foster trust, fairness, and legitimacy. And legitimacy is something that we can't define. It's going to have to be defined by the community and what they feel about our police department. So we're supposed to convene a collaborative with elected officials, police officials, and members of the community. And we have gotten some input from outside agencies. We hope to hear from Mary Pat Donnelly, the Rensselaer County DA, at some point. We reached out to the Public Defender's Office and so far have hit a stone wall. So what we have to do is we have to come up with a plan. In order to do that, and there's only 3 months to do it, we have to come up with a draft. We have to have a public hearing. We have to finish a plan and then have it adopted by the town board. And by April 1st, I must sign a certification for the division of the budget, which is really interesting, to certify that we have completed this. And the reason it's the division of the budget is because funding, state and federal funding, can be conditioned on whether you submit this or not. So I don't know if everybody, Tina, has everybody seen a copy of this thing?
I sent that in email, Robin. Unfortunately, I don't think I sent that to you, but I will send that to you at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, this is a resources and guide for public officials and citizens, New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. It's a very interesting read. I found myself feeling that half or more of it wasn't really relevant to the issues of East Greenbush, but we'll sort that out. That itself is not a plan. It raises questions, provides information and resources to help frame the dialogue that we hope to have with the community. So according to this document, the process should review the needs of the community, evaluate the department's current policies and practices, and just in those two clauses, review the needs of the community and evaluate the department's current policies and practice is a ton of work right there. Establish policies that allow police to effectively and safely perform their duties. It's one of the things I like about this whole process is that we want to find out how the community perceives the police, how we can change things or improve things, but we also hope to learn some things that'll help keep our police officers safe. It's a critical part of this. We want to involve the entire community, or as much of it as we can, in the discussion, and in a little while we'll talk about how we can do that. And then we'll offer a plan. And there's a lot of work to this, but I think those are basically the goals. Anybody want to comment on anything that I just said? Because we don't want to just hear me talk. Of course I will. Maria.
You know, I had, thanks Tina for sending that out, and I had the opportunity to read through a couple of times, and I tried to read through this document with an open mind as I was reading it, and I was surprised by some of the things that automatically sort of came to my mind, having lived here for so long. You know, oh, that probably doesn't apply to us. And then I went back and said, wait, did it? Does it? Does it apply to, what do I don't know the answer to that question. So I was surprised at kind of how little I knew, and also how little I knew about our police department. You know, I have, generally like really great feelings about our police department. But when I saw, for example, things like, oh, training isn't, there's not one kind of training that you have to do in police departments. I was like, really? Well, then who decides what the training is? Like, so many questions came to mind, and it surprised me. I guess that's the only thing I'll say about it, is that I was surprised at the questions that came to my mind. You know, certainly not criticisms, questions, just things I didn't know the answer to. And that's just my observation.
Yeah, on Thursday, I'll finish my 5th year as town supervisor. And I went through the first 3 years, exactly what you just described, is learning what a police department does and how it tries to do that. Because you're absolutely right. People have a kind of generic sense of police, but they really don't understand the specifics. I think it's part of what upsets police officers in this whole national debate, is that people don't really know what they do or how they do it or what the constraints are. But I do understand that. It's a good point. And so by the time we're done, Maria, you'll be an expert.
And who doesn't like that?
Any other comments on the goals? Elaine?
I thank you for bringing it up, Maria, because I noticed in reading that as well, and John and I having talked about this a lot lately, is, things have changed immensely since I started in 1995 in policing. Things that were acceptable practices or policies and procedures back then have certainly changed, and none more so than in the past year and a half, with even things, how we deal with juveniles. Things are always evolving. And if you're not in the mix, so to speak, in one way or another, whether it's a town board or somebody related, to a law enforcement or law enforcement, people don't necessarily always understand how things are so fluid and changing. And we have, as a department, an obligation to keep up with all those changes. And I think sometimes it's not always put out there to the community that now, okay, before we were arresting 16-year-old or 15-year-olds, as a juvenile, now, you're a juvenile till you're 18, and things are different, and people get misconceptions because they don't know. They think we're not doing our job, perhaps, or we're not doing it right, perhaps, because rules and laws and things have changed, especially between that and bail reform is a huge thing. People are frustrated, as we are in law enforcement, because sometimes people we arrest make it home before we were even off duty that night. And that's the same touch on, I think Rob and I spoke, and Tina and I spoke briefly earlier, same with mental health issues, which is and that's a huge frustration to us as police as well, because we want to do our best. That's what we got in this profession for. And we want the community, the public trust. It's like a bank. We want all the good juju in, so when something does happen, they realize that we are doing more good than bad, because people do make mistakes. We are human. But I think it's really important. I think this collaborative is important to hear from stakeholders that we normally wouldn't necessarily hear from, whether it's a casual conversation maybe, or Roger has been a great liaison to us and offered insight over the time he's been with us, but to get different perspectives from high school students that don't just see the SRO walking the hall of the high school. So we're excited, and I think I can speak for John on this as well, that everybody has a vested interest in this and moving forward and having some good transparency and some collaborativeness so that we can all work together and just make us even better police department. So. as well. Thank you.
I wonder if it would be not being in position on you in the department, but maybe if you could have Tom throw together something that starts with the academy and just say Zone 5 Academy, 560 hours of training, of training. Then the fact that you're accredited. In other words, try to get the committee to know some of the things you go through. So everybody goes through the Zone 5 Academy. You're an accredited agency. The
Our annual ongoing training that we do.
that underlying training that you do, and what courses you are mandating for your officers. And maybe he can list that. I took several of those courses, and I got to tell you something. They are outstanding. I wish I had those courses when I was chief, or when I was, in fact. And if we could just get out something, I don't think it needs to be, like an outline of what cops, what training cops go through, and requirements. For instance, does our department require a 2-year degree?
Ours does not. We do not.
We do not. Okay, but we do require the Zone 5 Academy. We do defy certification. Certification, it was a big thing in the news lately in East Greenbush, but it's always a big thing, certification. And who does that certification? DCJS. Now, I've said a long thing, but that shouldn't be a long document. It should be something that, you get an idea of what I'm going after?
And we have some of that information tonight that is on the draft agenda that we can touch on tonight even.
Yeah, Roger, you went out of order in the agenda.
Oh,
So, Roger, keep it up and I'm coming over there to have a talk with you.
I'm so sorry. Maria, you sparked something and, my apologies, Jack.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, and in terms of the goals, are there any other comments? Aaron, can I ask you a question? I mean, when Maria and myself and Tina go through this process of learning about police, are you sitting here thinking that you're pretty naive about what a police department is and what it does?
I certainly don't know what it entails or what goes on. I think a lot of kids my age don't really. You see your resource officer walking around the halls and stuff, and you kind of get the idea that he's there for protection, but not everyone understands what he's there for in his full his full job, or what the police department does as a whole, I think.
Yeah, especially the good kids like you have no idea what the police department does.
Right.
All right. Any other comments before I move on? Okay, next what we got to talk about is a timeline of what we're going to do. Because, I mean, literally December's over in 2 days. So for December, we hope to establish the committee, and I think we're still a click or two behind on that. I think we still need 1 or 2 people. We do need to establish a meeting schedule for 2021. Does anybody have any ideas on how often we should meet? My first thought was at least twice a month.
At least.
At least.
Yeah, and so what everybody's saying at least, would it be in position to do more than that? No.
I think it depends too, Jack, on what the, how ambitious the tasks will be.
Yeah, because to some extent we'll come back to this, because once we identify what data we want to look at, that's going to have a big impact on the workload.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think January is probably going to be our heavy lift where we're learning about the police department and we're taking in all of the information that's provided to us, reviewing the data and asking questions. And I think February and March will be a little bit more of creative and require a little less intensity and formal meetings. That's the way I thought of it. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that idea.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense yet of what kind of or the heft of the document that you hope to turn in, or is that still amorphous to us?
I think it's amorphous.
Okay.
But I do think what we want is a clear document. I mean, we're going to look at a lot of data. We should summarize some of it, but I don't think we want to overwhelm a plan with that. I think we want, at least in my mind, I want it to be readable. So that's a good question, though. It really is.
Have any other towns or that are around us or not around us for that matter completed this task or are working on it in any way that we know about?
I can speak to that a little bit if you like. I've spoken to some of the other chiefs, so they have started some of their stakeholder meetings, very much similar fashion as Town Supervisor has here. They started drafting a little bit of information and answering some of the questions, but it's still a work in progress. So none of them anticipate submitting anything until the deadline either.
Okay, thank you.
I think a lot of us are feeling our way around this, which is why tonight is kind of an organizational meeting. Just at the very least, we have to raise these questions before we can answer them. So, Tina, maybe we'll come back to the timeline. That work for you?
It does.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is norms of collaboration. And this is really, really important. Because this is the philosophy we're going to use and the process we're going to use and the nature of the collaborative that we will form. And you know, Tina had some thoughts here. Commit to learning. I mean, we all should start with the idea, as Maria pointed out, that we don't know everything. Certainly, some of us don't know very much. So we want to commit to learning. I think it's a commitment to an open mind and a fair look at what this is. When we work together, we want to presume positive intent from each other. You know, we can disagree without being disagreeable. And I'll be honest with you, the people that I'm looking at on this screen, this isn't even an issue because positive intent motivates. I mean, we didn't want anyone on this committee who didn't have positive intent, and we didn't want a chief of police when we hired one who didn't have positive intent, and the same with the assistant chief. So I think this one will be pretty easy to do. We want to promote a productive dialogue. You know, we want to, that's another way of saying keep Jack on task and don't let him wander. And we want to invite equal voices and perspectives. I mean, we're all, there's really no hierarchy here. I have to sign the certification. Tina, as deputy supervisor, is doing a lot of the legwork, a lot of the thinking, a lot of the organizing of this stuff. By the very nature of the exercise, the chief and assistant chief have a lot to do. And we'll be placing a lot of, I don't want to call them demands, but requests and need for information. We want to listen to each other. I think that's important. But again, with this group, I don't worry about use facts to support positions, which is, you know, Tina in 2015, Maria, when Tina and I first started running and we started putting together our plans, like how do we want to do this? What would make us different? She kept coming back to data-driven decisions. that you don't just shoot in the dark. If there's knowledge to be gained on a particular topic, we do our best to gain that knowledge so that when we do come up with a plan, when we do come up with provisions of a plan, they're supported by good information and are arrived at that way. Tina has this other saying, challenge ideas, not individuals. And I think that's, that's a good primer for life. But I think in this, again, it will be easily done. And then finally, to seek consensus for recommendations. At some point, we may come to, some language disputes, how to word something. And we may even come to somebody thinks it's very important to include something and someone else doesn't. And I think what we need to do is talk that through. We need to arrive at, to the maximum extent possible, we want to arrive at consensus. And I don't think that's going to be that difficult, because as long as the process really is collaborative and everyone gets a chance to say what they need to say and represent kind of the interests that are parts of your life, I think that gets done pretty easily. So anybody have anything to say about that stuff? I think looking at these faces, I don't worry about any of it. Chief, do you want to say something? No?
I'm good. You said it all. I'm in agreement.
It'd be a good time to argue. And the next item is engaging the public. How do we engage the public? And tonight, for example, at 7:15, the public can join the meeting. They can watch it up till then on YouTube, but at 7:15 they could come into the meeting. Tina controls the participation, and they can raise their points. What we need to do is some kind of advertising. We need to get people involved. We need to let people know what we're doing. We really want to actively encourage participation. And we don't want to stifle ideas, although I suspect in some communities, these meetings will draw the ire of the community, where people will come in and want to get on a soapbox and make speeches. And to some extent, you have to let that happen. But how we engage the public in these meetings, should we put a time limit? At town board meetings, we have a 5-minute time limit on participation. Tina and I talked about giving first priority to East Greenbush residents because we're not even sure who would participate. I'm wondering if there will be people who will be kind of seeking these things out to make a certain kind of statement. How we engage the public is important, and we don't want to in March have a public hearing on something where the whole town goes, what are you talking about? We really want people to know what this is. People can write to town hall, can send us comments if they want. They can participate in these meetings. And then I think that brings us to the survey. Tina, why don't you talk about that?
Sure. So one of the challenges when a mandate like this is passed and an executive order is passed, and you say to a police department or any organization that we want you to change, and that implies that there's something fundamentally wrong. And as Supervisor Conway said, we don't believe that. There's in every organization, there's always room for improvement, but there are a lot of fantastic things that happen on a day-to-day basis in East Greenbush, 24 hours a day with our police department. And we are very proud of our officers and our chief and our assistant chief in particular, who are here representing them. So for an organization to buy into any recommendations or any change that occurs, we have to hear from them. And we have to hear what they think they're doing right and what they're proud of and what their strengths are, and maybe where they see some area for improvement. So we have put together 2 surveys to collect additional data, because we don't want to just look at the data that's collected from arrests. We want to look at how the department operates and how they feel. So we put together a survey for review by this committee for our police officers. It would be voluntary, it would be anonymous, but it would ask some really important questions that would help us understand those questions of how they feel about their job, how they feel about the community. And we will put that forward for review. But then the other survey that we'd like to hear feedback on from the committee is a community survey. And that would be open to any resident or anyone who does business or owns a business in East Greenbush. And we would try to limit it to those parameters for people that have some tie to our community. And it asks questions about their feelings of safety and their relationships with the police. And it does ask really positive questions and strengths-based questions so that we can understand the positive role, but it also asks about some challenges maybe that they've encountered, which is, what we're here to address is some of those challenges, but we certainly can't only focus on challenges. We have to look at the strengths and the things that are going right. And we have to hear from, I think, maybe people will disagree, I think we have to engage and hear from our department.
Yeah, now Tina, how do you, the practical question is, how do we finalize those surveys?
Well, they are not something that we necessarily created. They do have sourcing for them. And so what we could do is, if the committee agrees, we could send it out by email so that people have time to look over the survey items and think about items that they maybe think are essential, and maybe items that they don't want to ask, and certainly what's missing. Because there have been many community surveys that we looked at. The chief and the assistant chief and I looked at several ways that communities are gathering their input, and they were kind of weak, those surveys. So we went for a better source, a national survey that was conducted through the COPS office, through that's the federal office. And then we looked at a community survey that was done by the Pew Research Center. So, hopefully there's, for those of you survey quirky people like me, there's validity and reliability in some of those items, but maybe it's not getting at what we think it needs to get at.
So you'll circulate the drafts?
If that's okay with everyone, if they have time to read that in the email, does that sound like a good way to do it?
Yeah, and at the very least, at the next meeting, we'll sign off and get it going.
Yeah, we could have an email thread conversation.
And Tina, we can adjust those surveys.
Yeah.
You're saying, I just want to be clear, we can.
Great question, because yes, I'm going to send it out to you in a Word document. And then what we'll do is the town will get some type of an electronic survey software, either SurveyMonkey or Survey123, and we'll make it electronic. So when we have to upload those questions or input those questions, we can change them. We can modify them. We can add more to them. We just would want to consider the phrasing to make sure that it's easy.
Right.
And also the length of the survey,
Mhm.
because people's interest will wane if it's too long. I spent some time today going over those surveys. There's a lot of good questions.
And we have the ability to, on the flip side of it, we have the ability ourselves or whomever to collate the survey responses.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We should be able to disaggregate by the demographics that we're collecting. So those are good questions, Maria. Again, are we asking the right demographic questions on the survey so that we can disaggregate it?
Okay. Great.
Any other thoughts on engaging the public? Okay, let's begin the process of getting everyone on the same page. Chief, can you give us an overview of the department?
believe that's going to be for me.
I'll go get it, John.
Yeah. So ironically enough, for the annual report, my task was to do the organizational chart for the department. The old one was a little tough to follow, and the new one, the chief, had no choice but to like it because I browbeat her with it. So she had but broken down, basically here we have 24 sworn officers, 4 patrol sergeants, 1 detective sergeant, 8 full-time dispatchers and 9 part-time dispatchers. We also have a civilian staff, Steph Shively, who does the work of pretty much the entire department all by herself and holds the place together. It's important to note that, a lot of, we talked earlier about, I believe Maria was the one that brought it up about, having questions about what exactly the police department does. And most people think that, police officers go out on the street, they patrol, they write the tickets, they take complaints and all that stuff. But I believe I forwarded this to you, Tina, yes, and Jack, and maybe we can make it available to the members. And you'll get a pretty good idea of all the other tasks that these officers and sergeants and civilian staff are tasked with. They all take up various responsibilities and roles throughout the department to help it move quicker. And to just name a few, we have instructors in use of force. We have instructors in firearms. We have people that are taking on our drone program, which we're getting online here. So we have a couple guys that got certified as drone operators and know all the laws and things like that to operate the drone. We have officers that are accident investigators, specifically for like fatal accidents and things like that. And they operate what we call the total station, which is basically a GPS and laser measuring system that will map out the entire accident scene for you, so that it can do all the calculations and everything for you. We have officers that are bike patrol officers and guys that take on so many other different roles throughout the department. So there's a lot involved in making this department run, and these guys, men and women, have all taken up those responsibilities to help it run smoothly. So I think you'll be kind of surprised to see just how many roles these guys have besides going out on the street and doing what a normal patrol officer does or what the sergeants do. So bear that in mind when you get this. I think it'll help sort of explain some of the things.
Okay. The next point is accreditation. When we got into office, we found out that there had been an accreditation officer since 2001, but the department wasn't accredited. So this is Chief, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is the genesis of the Monday morning at 9 a.m. meetings with the chief of police. I met with Chris Lavin and I told him he hated those meetings. So I told him, you got to do these till we get accredited. But can you talk about, and we are accredited, I'm very proud of that. Can you talk about what that means?
I'm gonna let John tackle this one as well, and then I'm gonna pick up the rest.
He's cracking a whip on me here. So, yeah, I believe probably since 2001 was probably Mark Mann that started that off. Is that correct, Chief?
He was one of the officers, yeah.
And then, Jim Kondo has since taken that over and did a great job with it. And basically, for those that don't know, accreditation is a certification through DCJS that basically certifies our department to meet standards, either meet or exceed certain standards. It's based on 109 law enforcement standards. I believe those can be made available also. And what it's designed to do is basically increase our effectiveness and efficiency as a department. It promotes cooperation and coordination among criminal justice services and the agency and other law enforcement agencies. It ensures appropriate training and promotes public confidence and trust. And a lot of this should sound familiar. I believe the governor's mandate addresses a lot of these issues. So the accreditation that we received sort of helps us tackle these and hopefully gives us a little bit of a head start. There's only about a third of the agencies in the state that are accredited right now, so we're among that top third. And what it also does is through our policies and procedures and our training and all that, we get a continuous evaluation by DCJS. So I think it's every 2 years or every 4 years they come. They look over our policies, they look over our training, they'll look over to make sure that we're in compliance with the accreditation process, and not just on paper, but they'll actually make sure that the members of the department are in compliance, meaning that they'll take certain officers and question them about a policy and make sure that those officers are aware of what that policy is, what it states, and how they can find it and look it up and all that kind of stuff. So it's not just us saying we're doing well, it's DCJS coming in and saying we're doing well also, and making sure that we're up to snuff and meeting or exceeding those standards. And Jack, you'll love this. It's also provides for a nice insurance reduction when it comes to the insurance end of things. So hopefully it should allow us to get certain discounts and things like that. Also, along the same line of this, we've partnered with Lexipol and Police One. Lexipol is a organization that is currently helping us with our policies and procedures and bringing them up to an even higher standard, putting everything online for the officers to access, for making sure that we're meeting the minimum standards for in-service training, or what we call, roll call type training, things like that. And Police One, Roger, you touched on about some of those online trainings that you attended and all that, the same ones that we're taking. All those things help us be in compliance with accreditation, and this just puts us that much further ahead of the game. So accreditation was a pretty big deal. I know that other agencies, including my former agency, looked into being accredited, and it is a huge undertaking. It is not something that you can do on your own. You definitely need a lot of help with it, and it does take quite a bit of time to get it done. And I got to give credit where it's due. Getting it done here, Jim Condo and Chief and the rest of the members did a great job.
It's funny, John, that you mentioned Mark Mann, because I was in office for 3 weeks. Mark had just retired, and he walked into my office with this stack of information, and he said, "Do you know what accreditation is?" I said, "Nope." So he gave it to me and came back a month later and said, "Have you read it?" I said, "I have read it." And one of the things that Tina and I came to do was lay a new foundation for town government in East Greenbush. And I thought accreditation was a really important part of that. One of the things that's interesting, there's 109 standards, but when the accreditation panel comes in, they also do proofs. They go through the paperwork to make sure that those standards are being met. And you can fail accreditation if you have this nice set of standards, but nobody's following it. So they really study both the policies themselves and the follow through. It's very impressive. And John, at the ceremony, they actually used the statistic that only 25% of departments are accredited. So wow. we were very, very proud of that. So, okay, then next, did you want to say something, Chief?
Yeah, just for bringing up, I wanted to add to that. That in itself is a big undertaking every time they come in, but we welcome it. And when he's saying proofs, just for those that don't understand, they'll take so many domestic incident reports. They'll take so many, anything with your critical incidents, any use of forces. They want things to do with interviews. They pick and choose with random samples. So it's not like we can just say, oh, here's the perfect one. It's, they're going in, digging and looking. And so we're judged, fully judged. It's not like a selective choice that we give them to look at. So that's important. We are very proud that we're accredited, and we're fortunate that Jimmy Kondo is one of the auditors for accreditation. He became one after having done this process. So him and Steve Frankowski from Rensselaer do go to other agencies. So we're very confident that we are meeting those 109 standards because, Officer Kondo certainly knows his wheelhouse. So.
Fantastic.
Chief, how are policies established?
Right, so John touched a little bit on Lexapol, which is a new program that thankfully the town board and Supervisor Conway allowed us to invest in. Not that our policies are bad by any means, because the content is excellent. So what Lexapol does is kind of puts it in a more formalized format for us. And what you can do is we can share, and we will be sharing these with you. But they basically all start out the same, so it's user-friendly with the purpose and scope, definitions that you might encounter. For instance, I'm looking at a use of force one right now, which is going to be a big topic we have. Then it has, the policy content, and if there is factors to be, considered in it, if there's a process in it. So you'll get a chance to see what it looks like. So with us partnering with Lexapol, it's helped us to make sure that all of our policies are more user-friendly. And what we're doing is we're in the process of developing that manual. It's usually about a year process. We just started it this year. COVID slowed us down a little bit. With meetings and whatnot, we've been doing some virtual ones with our handler, so to speak, at Lexapol. And what we did is a full implementation policy where we gave them all of our accreditation standards and our policies. They look at them, they compare them to the different federal and state laws, different case law that's out there, and court decisions that have come down from federal and state district courts, appellate courts, and to make sure that we're in compliance with all of those rulings, in addition to best practices, which you see across the nation. So they take all of these into consideration, and what's good for us is Jim Condo doesn't have to always be the one making sure that a new case law wasn't changed. It's automatic updates that are sent to us when this is fully implemented, and make sure that we're, fulfilling our obligations as police officers to follow the rules and the laws that are out there. There is tables of contents for the accreditation standards and the ones we currently have, and there's one for Lexapol, which we'll ultimately end up sharing with everybody to look at. And then right now we're kind of piecemealing both. We're using a lot of our current policies as we're transitioning to more and the newer ones. And again, the content is very similar. There might be some wording changes and things. For instance, in the use of force one, chokehold was something big this year that was taken out. So we're fortunate, Lexapol automatically generates that and lets us know when these changes happen. So that's what we're in the process of doing, which Lexapol has been a big undertaking. I've been happy to get John on board to have another hand in it. It takes, not just us reviewing them with Jim Condo and our people at Lexapol, but we're using our content experts, like our firearms instructors, our use of force instructors, our action investigators, everything down to there's policies on drones, there's a policy on having a chaplain for the department. So, there's been a lot of people that have had some input in this. Ultimately, the decision at the end is, of course, this administration, but, we look for them, our evidence custodian, because they're the ones who do the evidence. So we're looking for input. So it is a process, but it's going to be well worth it when it's done.
And now, Roger, let's talk training.
All right. Yeah. Do you want to start, Roger, or do you want me to do a little?
No, go ahead, Chief. Thank you.
John mentioned earlier, he was trying to take all my points I noticed earlier. I'm just going to point that out of my things I wanted to say. But he did talk about Police One, which again, we were very fortunate that our supervisor and our town board understood that that's something that would benefit us. Training is expensive. We have, a small department, we have certain trainings that we do every year, and we allot so much money every year for budget. But then other things do come up that we want to participate in, and we might not necessarily have budgeted for because it's a new training, like procedural justice. This is new trainings that come up. Police One affords us that opportunity to participate in a lot of these trainings because they're online, which Roger's had the pleasure of experiencing some of them so far. Some of them are interactive. There's always quizzes and tests, and there's videos, there's narrative. So we have disseminated quite a few so far. We got on board with this just a few months back, and knowing what the governor's executive order was, we started picking away at a lot of the ones that are referenced in that. So I can, proudly say we have a lot of that under our officers' belts already that necessarily weren't trainings that, we were doing before. We do have We go through the ethics, which I'm going to let Roger touch on. We have annual training like firearms, we do twice a year. We do defensive tactics, we do taser training, active shooter training, felony vehicle traffic stop, legal updates, which is important that the district attorney's office gives to us. We sometimes have the opportunity to add in some other trainings, which is where I connected with Robin, and she came with NAMI and did a presentation at our legal updates training. And then we have things like workplace violence and sexual harassment in the workplace and all these. We've been fortunate not only to be able to do some of those online as well, for instance, for bloodborne pathogens, because our risk management company for the town, when we met with them last year, let us know that they have online training through safety skills. So a lot of that has been great. We've been able to get a lot more training that we necessarily wouldn't have because of finances in time. It's hard to schedule a full department to all go sit for even a 2-hour block or a 4-hour block. So those are a lot of the things that we've been doing with our training, and I think you'll be happy to see when you see what we've accomplished so far as the governor's order as far as training. There's a lot more to come. We have something, we've been issuing out 1 or 2 due every 2 to 3 weeks. Because some of them are an hour, some are 2 hours. But the officers are able to do them while they're working, and they would go back on the street if they get a call, hit pause, they can pick up where they left off. So it's good, and they have to complete it before it says it. And there's a software program that us administrators are able to monitor to make sure everyone's on task and getting them accomplished, and send you reminders and keeps track. So there's no cutting corners on it by any means.
Chief, I'm curious, that sounds great. What's the reaction been of folks to the online training? Because it is really an additional thing to do, right? Like, they're already working hard, and now you have to sit down and do this. Is it been received pretty well, or?
Yeah, the majority of the guys have. There's only been a couple instances where someone was a day or 2 behind, but we see that they've been busy on the street that night, or they had, the afternoon shift in particular, it's a little bit more difficult. The call volume is high, and usually those calls manifest into longer arrests and not as quick of an arrest and turnover sometimes. But I think generally it's been very good, and I think they prefer to do that than to go sit, for 8 hours. They can do it in a 2-hour block.
Yeah. Thank you.
John, do you have anything that I forgot about policy or training that you wanted to add?
I would like to add something. Well, just as a footnote, the accreditation panel called our training program robust, which was good. But the other thing is to introduce the practicality of all this. Training is expensive. That's what drives overtime. I mean, there's other things. Officers have to go to court. There's something happens at a shift change. There's a lot of things that drive overtime, but nothing drives it like training. And so everything that we're talking about here depends on staffing, budgeting, equipping a police department, which as the chief will testify, when budget season comes, she and I and Megan spend a lot of time together trying to figure this out.
I hear no a lot.
Just one thing I wanted to point out, as much as the online training is a great tool, and I think it's limited to, a certain type of training. Fortunately, right now with COVID, our hands-on type training is suffering. It's hard to get everybody together to do a large-scale active shooter training, given the environment that we have right now with the pandemic. High-risk vehicle stops are something difficult for us to plan and do. And, these are the things that are perishable skills. So if we're not actively training in them regularly, it becomes an officer safety issue. So as much as the online training, yes, it saves money. When it comes to that training that you really need to do hands-on all the time, it very much is money well spent, and it saves lots of zeros and lawsuits and things like that in the long run. So, you know, don't discount it all the way, but at the same time, you know, the online training has saved us quite a bit here, and particularly with a lot of the mandates that are coming and that we have to deal with. It certainly has helped us on our way. But those perishable skills are ones that we really need to keep up with, and this is you know, kind of hitting hard with this pandemic.
Yeah, COVID changed everything. And then the next question, I want to kind of lump these together. The issue is department data. What data does the police department collect? But while we're doing that, we also need to figure out a process to decide what we want to look at among that data. Also, when Chief talks about Lexipol or Police One or the accreditation standards, what we'll do is circulate the table of contents of those different exercises, and then we as a group should decide which of those policies need to be reviewed in the context of this exercise. Chief, but could you talk a little bit about how much data you have?
We collect a lot.
Yeah.
So between our internal Emergitech system and reporting through DCJS and the portal, and I'm going to let John jump in a little bit about the use of force reporting because I've asked him what's doing that now. Every month I provide to the town board a monthly report, which has a statistical aspect, there's also a financial aspect. And on that, there'll be different things as far as how many investigations we've opened, how many have been closed by patrol, by the detective office. And it kind of breaks down what the type of investigations were for that month. Property stolen, property recovered, how many accidents. I can tell you to date, there was 395 accidents. This was as of like November's data, because that's when I had to do my monthly report. We wrote about 1,500 tickets for the year. We collect that data. We collect parking tickets. We had about 2,800 EMS and fire calls. We're right now just under 25,000 calls for the year. We collect that data. We're at a little over 650 arrests for the year. We had like 36 overdose calls. So we have pretty much data on what you're going to want to know, I would assume. We can tell you our domestic violence numbers went up by about 40 calls from 19 to 20, which I'm not surprised, everybody being home and with their spouses and families as much as they are. So we can break down the data that way as far as, you know, those type of numbers. We can also break down based on age and race of the offender, and, you know, male versus gender, male versus female. So this is all information that we're able to get to you, you know, from this year or for previous years. It breaks down what type of arrests we do every month. We can tell you what how many officers are doing for arrests. So there's you know, even down to our response time, which averages about 2.33 seconds, 2 minutes and 33 seconds for a response time. I can tell you that. So if there's there's certainly a plethora of other information that I can get you with my senior dispatcher, who's the one that usually gets it all for me.
And for the record, 2 minutes and 33 seconds is world class.
I get fresh 3 minutes.
So do we want to pause there and hear from our committee on questions about the data or thoughts on the data?
Yeah.
Well,
ahead,
I'll speak
Maria.
up again. Couple of things came to mind. That amount of data is incredible that we can, that you provide to the town board. It's very impressive. Couple of things came to mind. Is there a way for us to take a look at that data in some context of the, you know, the demo, and this may be for down the road a little bit, but, you know, the demographics of the town, you know, the makeup of the town, you know, so in other words, if we're looking at the race or age of those arrests, how does that compare to you know, what's the context of that with the demographic makeup of our town? Because that's really kind of what the governor's driving at in some of this stuff, right? Is it disproportionate stuff or whatever? So maybe we could think about, is there a way for us to do that? The other thing, you were talking, Chief, about the rise in DV, and I presume a rise in the overdoses as well, but is there a way for us to look at a trend line over time somehow, if it's valuable or not? I don't know. Those are two things that just came to my mind right away.
Absolutely, we can do that. And I think I don't know when our 2020 census information is supposed to come out. So the last census information had our population at like 94% white and, you know, 2-point-something% Black, a small percentage for Native American and Asian and others. But I'd be interested to see how that's changed, because I think our demographics have changed in the past years. So, and I will say a lot of our arrests are not people that live here. They're not people that, you know, live in our community. They're people that come into our community. Unfortunately, Walmart is a big draw for a lot of our shoplifting arrests, you know, and a lot of the people take the bus line right through town and come to town. So that also is a factor in some of the numbers for the arrests.
And that's so interesting, because that's really, you know, as we look at this and as we look at some of the comparisons, those are the anecdotal things that you'll tell us that will inform why numbers might be the way they are, or that you know, we have motels right across the river where we know that there's drug things happening or whatever, you know. Well, I don't know that. I'm not on the police force, but you know, those are the things that you'll be able to help us understand as we look at the data. So that'll be so helpful. Thank you.
And the context is so important, because if you look at the demographics of the town, and 2.5% or 3% of the town is African American, but by the arrests at Walmart, where the arrests are 20 or 22% African American, you need to put that context on it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it looks disproportionate, and it looks like profiling.
Yep.
It would also be a perspective to look at, you know, complaint versus initiated. You know, if you're getting a complaint from somebody who's saying, I want somebody arrested, and that criteria is there, versus maybe an officer initiated arrest based on that officer alone, that provides a perspective also as far as the data, you know, where officers may not have a choice in whether they arrest based on that complaint. It is what it is, versus an officer initiated arrest.
On a different note, as far as the data, in addition to our monthly report, I have the town supervisor had me do an annual report last year for the first time, and this year. So that is something else that has some of these, you know, some of this information in it. In addition to, I guess on a different note, data on things that we do that aren't necessarily police related, but community related. So I include that in there too, because we do spend a lot of our time trying to connect with the community, because, you know, that's where we're going to get our good deposits for our bank. You know, I think the more the community gets to know us and sees that, you know, we're doing those things, you know, they don't always just judge us based on how they're treated, but on the outcome of our interactions. You know, they judge us on how they're treated rather than the outcome of the interaction. You know, I can tell you how many times I've arrested people over the years, at the end say thank you, you know, because they were treated, you know, fairly. So we like to include a lot of that in our data too, things that we do, because it's not just someone's forced to interact with us. You know, they choose to come to, you know, our coffee with a cop or things like that, and that's how they get to kind of know us. So I can't really, you know, we give you statistical numbers, we can just give you events so that you understand that some of the other stuff we're doing.
Mm-hmm. We're implementing a canine program, and when I was reading about canine programs, one of the things that happens is, you know, there's music in the park, and the officer shows up with the dog and the community goes nuts. They love that. It's such a beautiful side benefit of that program.
So if I could just pause right here and just a time check, we told the public they could join at 7:15. We do have 2 people waiting to join. So if we could ask a couple other questions about the data, and then I'll admit those people from the waiting room. So if Roger or Robin or Aaron have any questions about the data, we'd like to address those before we admit people.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I don't feel like I am prepared to ask a lot of questions about it yet, but I'm fascinated and impressed by everything that I've heard so far tonight. So I'm just soaking it all in right now. So I'm sure next time I'll have a lot of questions.
I think I'm feeling the same way as well.
Yeah, it is a lot. There's no doubt about it. The other thing, Tina, is what we've got to figure out is how we're going to make the decisions of what data we want, because there's a ton of data. We want to focus it in various ways, and between the training and policy review and the data, you and I should probably come up with some mechanism for getting out to the group what the options are. And then we can go from there, maybe at the next meeting.
I think that's a good idea. Too much information can be hurt the process.
It could.
So if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to admit the 2 people that are in the waiting room. I think the live stream might have stopped with problems with my Wi-Fi here. I'm not sure, but I am recording the meeting so we can upload the recording and apologies.
Hi, David. Okay, so what we'll do is just finish the last couple of items on the agenda, and then if Carol or David want to speak, ask questions, or make a comment, we'll do that. So it's really important that we figure out what we're going to look at. If there's 109 standards for accreditation, 15 of them may be relevant to what we're doing here. And we have to figure out what's the way to parse that so that we get the information that we need, we are consistent with it. So we have to do that with the data, with the policies. We have to do that with training. Those Police One courses are really interesting, but they really run the gamut of different activities or components of policing. And some of them are more important to this exercise than others. So what we're going to have to do is organize how we're going to, the data, the policies, and the training, how we're going to select which of those 3, what subsets do we want to create of those 3 components. Okay, so that's going to be important. And Tina, you and I can talk about what the chief sent in terms of table of contents and lists is really helpful. And I think we start from there and we carry on. I mean, the document on the resource guide has some advice on what to look at and how to do that. So we'll take a look at that, but this group's going to have to decide what we want to look at, and we're going to have to decide soon. So we'll jump on that. Tina, collecting additional information, what are you thinking?
So we kind of touched on this already, the idea of a community survey and a police department survey, but I think we wanted to ask the committee members if there was any ideas that they bring to us tonight about additional information that they'd like to hear about, different ways to collect information. What were they hoping to learn?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm sharing something that I'd hope to learn, but I would like to say that I would be more than willing to use the data or the survey and send it out to our NAMI community for the Capital Region. And a number of NAMI families do live in East Greenbush, and might be a good way to get some feedback from that family member consumer perspective of and knowing also, and I know personally, not only myself, but other families who have had interaction with East Greenbush Police Department with a loved one, a family member who has had a mental health crisis and can give you feedback through that. So maybe I can use our newsletter or to discuss being part of this committee and encouraging community interaction and involvement by reaching out through that way. If that's helpful, happy to do that. And that's, you know, the NAMI community loves to hear about what we're doing in you know, that's one of our objectives is to influence policy. So this is exciting for them to hear too.
Yeah, one of the things, Robin, about this concept of procedural justice, where what procedural justice refers to is there perceived justice in the process of interacting with police officers as opposed to judging by outcomes? And I think the mental health community would be a really important source of data on the procedural justice part of it.
And of course, we include that's great, Robin. Thank you for that. And of course, we included Aaron because he's a high school student. So, Aaron, do you have any thoughts on you know, additional information that we should collect, additional thoughts, things you'd like to learn, anything about the process in general?
I think I'm most curious about the community events that happen maybe with police officers. I think that's a great way to kind of, I guess, bridge the gap between the idea of police officers being bad people. Obviously they're not, but the idea that there may be, it's a negative interaction with a police officer, and that they're kind of just part of the community, that they understand, they live in your community, they're your friends in a sense. I think that's I want to learn more about that, I think.
I'm always looking for volunteers to help flip burgers at my next cookout with a cop. So
There you go.
Yeah, watch the chief. She's working all the time. Maria?
The one area I was interested in, and I don't have an answer to this, I'm just raising it, is how we get information from those folks that are a little bit underground, you know, maybe like, you know, undocumented folks or people who are here who are, you know, working at the apple farms. I don't know if we have, I'm not, you know, I don't know if there's a lot of those folks in town. You know, I wonder, you know, what their thoughts are about their interactions with our police department. And I don't know how we get that information, and I don't know who has those kind of connections with those populations in town, but that's something I'm interested in.
Without using names, I think that there's some people that I could reach out to personally that might be able to connect with some of those people. And
Super.
And for that, and see if they'd be willing to complete a survey and see if we've had contact with them that may not necessarily have an address in town, but do work in our community. So
Super.
take care of that. Another thought popped in my head is, and again, you know, whether they're willing to participate or not, you know, maybe a shorter version of some type of survey for people that we have arrested as optional, of course, if they are willing to do that and give us any feedback. And now when I say shorter, I think it has to be much shorter and more concise, but that might be something to get from people that necessarily don't live here or work here, but that we are arresting, so as far as feedback too. So that might be something else to consider.
It's also amazing to me how police officers learn, Maria, of so many different types of people in the community. I did a ride along with Mike Guadagnino. I could not believe the crevices of town where he knew, and he knew who was there, and he knew, you know, what their angles were. It's really interesting. These guys know a lot of what you're describing. The best source would be the police officers. They really know a lot about that. So the next thing we have to do, or the important thing we have to do besides the meeting schedule, is we have to decide the immediate tasks for the next meeting. I do think that what I was harping on before with the data, what data we want, what policies we want to review, what training we want to review. So there is that. Tina, did you take notes on some of the other stuff we talked about?
I did. So I think probably, we could set, the easiest task to complete probably is for people to review the surveys first and turn around the feedback on that. And then maybe what we could do is send out the information about the policies and training next to see what people would want to review on that front. Before we dig into the data, because I do think that that is the most complex piece. And if we tackle the easy ones first, we're going to keep people on the committee. But if people see it a little bit differently, we can certainly, that's why we're here, is to listen to what people think was the best next step and what we should do before our next meeting.
And are you saying let's do this sequentially? Let's review the surveys first? Resolve that and then
throwing
move
that
on?
out there. I think that's the easiest thing to get done and to make people engaged and feel like they're, they get it.
Yeah.
But let me know if people see things differently. Let's do it.
I think sequential is a good idea. So things aren't flying all over the place.
Okay.
And I think maybe after we've had a chance to look at some of the policies and training, at the next or the meeting after that, we can do the data question. Where
I
people
think
have
that's a
more
good idea.
context.
And I think the data is really going to give us a lot of really rich discussion and conversation. And that's where we're going to learn a lot. We're not going to learn a lot from editing a survey or coming up with questions. We're going to be able to put ourselves into that. But
Do you want to start, are you going to start a text or an email stream for people to throw at us things they want to know about? So that we could start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. I can do that later tonight. I can send out the surveys because they're all set to go. I just wanted to kind of get the nods of the heads that people were interested in doing that.
And what about meetings? When can we, is there a night of the week we could pick that's
Would be
better
good.
for people? And then do as many of those in a month as we need?
Yeah, that's a good idea, Jack.
From the town board's perspective, Monday is usually the best night. We do our meetings on Wednesday, zoning boards on Tuesday. Of course, I'm now talking as if people go into town hall and actually do meetings. So since it's Zoom, the only night that wouldn't be good for us is Wednesday.
The only exception in January to Mondays would be the 4th because we have a meeting already.
Yep, and is Martin Luther King Day on a Monday?
Yeah, that's the 18th. I believe that's
Yeah.
18th.
Yeah, it is.
Would we want to do Tuesdays? Would that work, or is Tuesday not a good day?
Tuesday works for me. Okay.
Does it not work for anyone? And I
Could
think
we-
we all have to understand that the expectation is that you do the best you can.
Yeah.
in attending.
But is the 5th too soon? That's next Tuesday.
No,
Let's do it.
yep,
Okay. 6 o'clock on Zoom.
So before next Monday, you'll receive an email from me with the 2 surveys and the Zoom link. And maybe we could recruit somebody else to do the live stream because I think my Wi-Fi was a little bit overloaded. I do have some other people in the house that want to use it too.
Oh,
Those adult children. Yeah, Tina, I'm going to have Megan kind of be an adjunct to this group. She's the technology wizard and also organizing that through her office any copying or any kind of work that people need. If we send out documents and you don't have the right printer or you need them printed, we'll print them for you. We'll deliver them to you. So we have staff to do that, and this is a high priority. So and don't be shy about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so next meeting. So should we open it up now?
Unless there's anything the committee members wanted to add, or no?
I do want to say for Aaron, you're awesome. I mean, we poured so much information on you, and you didn't once look like you were bewildered or not paying attention. So it's really, really good to have you. Your voice is going to be so important
Thank
in
you.
this process. So good job.
Thank
For
you very
sure.
much.
And Robin, showing up at the last minute like this, thank you so much. Although you did say after you spoke to the town board, if we needed anything, call you. So,
That's right. That's right.
so here we are.
Death now.
Okay, David, do you have anything you would want to add?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
The
There you
first
go.
thing is the fact that this meeting was just announced at 5 o'clock today through email burst. Was that something that was overlooked, or was this in the planning works before this, or what?
No, it was in the plan. It was in the works. I don't like to make excuses, but COVID destroyed town hall, and we have 12 positive tests out of 25 employees, and the important one to me was me, and I'm the one who should have gotten this out, and I'm just way behind. 540 emails and things like this that fell through the cracks. It won't happen again.
The other part of it is the YouTube portion of this before this Zoom meeting. Was that a public meeting as well, or is that just for observation for the public? Or
I'm sorry, David, say that again.
the YouTube meeting, a portion of this meeting that was held at 6 o'clock today, was that a public?
Mhm.
Public?
Yeah.
Because that stopped abruptly at 28 minutes.
Okay, yeah, Tina's recording and she'll upload the whole meeting.
Yeah, I think my Wi-Fi crashed because we got the little spinny wheel, and then the YouTube went down after 28 minutes. So my apologies on that. I think I do have some people using their PS4.
The other thing too is any public comments that are made, I would highly suggest that you make them public on the town's website so all can see.
Yep.
I'm very disappointed of the lack of interest in the meetings, the town board, zoning board, so forth and so on. This is a general malady in the town of East Greenbush. So there's got to be some more outreach so the public knows this stuff is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning. Absolutely. We need to advertise. We need to publicize. We need to hammer this collaborative so that people get involved.
Okay. But another comment I want to make is the fact that I fully support law enforcement.
Mhm.
You know that, all right?
Yep.
They have to do a very tough job. Their motto is serve and protect. They serve and protect all the residents of East Greenbush, not just a selected few, but all the residents of East Greenbush, right? I see in the actual proclamation from Governor Cuomo is the fact that, number one, he ties the compliance to this to money.
Yeah,
So
he
that
does.
if you don't comply to it, you get a slap in the hand by virtue of you not getting funds from the state of New York. I don't think that is right. I think that is a wrong way of going about it. The cat's out of the bag now. There's nothing you do but complain about it. The other thing is that he says that a local law or resolution as appropriate. So you have a choice of being resolution or law. As a citizen, I think we have enough laws in the books to protect our citizens. So my feeling is that it should be a resolution, if anything, not a law, a local law. We have if we can't enforce the laws that are currently on the book, then we're in trouble. Lots of problems. So again, I would encourage you to make all the public comments public through the town's website as this moves forward. I can assure you that I'll make some via email as well. That's all I have to say for tonight. Thank you.
David, have you, I know you follow this stuff. The way on the website, we set up a separate section for the comprehensive plan update. We're
Yep.
going to set up a section for this so that when you come onto the website, you can see it right there. All of what you need to know about this will be organized in one place. We're really starting on the fly tonight. And I'll just say that I personally, committee will decide, but I personally agree that a resolution rather than a local law is the way to go. But thanks, Dave. Carol, do you want to say anything? You're muted and we can't see you. So if you do, unmute and fire away.
No, I won't really, nothing to say at the moment. I'll be interested in the future and, what's decided and what the survey and, what other people have to say.
Yeah, we really appreciate your participation. It's David's point that we need people to, if this is going to be a collaborative with the community, police department, elected officials, we need the community. I know that's kind of obvious, but it's also, can't be said enough. Okay, does anybody have anything they want to add? Roger, you were very quiet tonight.
Well, I read the agenda. I was spending time reading the agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know some of this stuff, huh? So, okay, Tina, you got anything else?
I do not.
Okay, I don't think we need a motion to adjourn, but what I will say is thank you. I think this was a really good start. I think that, we're going to have to move quickly. We don't have much time. And David's exactly right. They're tying money to this. And I get very nervous when money gets tied to anything. But it's also, I think it's good to make this a highly concentrated exercise. It's not going to wander. It's not going to, where were we kind of things. We're going to hammer it week after week if we have to, and we'll get where we're going. So thank you, everyone, for your participation tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care of yourself, Jack.
I will, Roger. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.